right. Go ahead, John.
All right, here we go. Greetings from New York City. Right now, I am in my apartment on 25th Street and 9th Avenue, about a 10-minute walk from the Jacob Javits Convention Center, which has just been retrofitted as a makeshift hospital for 1,000 incoming coronavirus patients. We're in the heart of what is now being called the epicenter of the virus, and it's just strange and scary times. We're not sure exactly because tests have been slow and sometimes inconclusive, but we do have infected disciples. We also have dozens of nurses and doctors and other healthcare professionals serving the sick on the daily. So it's very dangerous, especially because of how low PPE is, personal protective equipment, for our nurses and doctors. So thank you for your prayers for New York City. I really want to thank each one of you. We believe right now that the heroes of the moment are the messengers and the medics. People who communicate the message are vital in a crisis because they give life-saving information to the masses. And we may not be in triage, but we're in the communicative trenches, giving direction and providing inspiration to our churches. And I think the spiritual need for fellowship is greater than ever right now as we're social distancing. And I appreciate so much how you've all taken the challenge to combat social isolation with digital connection. It helps me to remember that 2,000 years ago, there was a severe persecution and Roman highways that somehow together in this collision and juxtaposition of crazy events opened the door for the gospel message to be spread all around the world. Today, COVID-19 and the information highways have opened a similar door for all of us. Now, we have to be careful using words like opportunity while people are dying in this time. This is not silver lining rhetoric. This is about saving souls and holding the church together in crisis. Now there's a captive audience and a tool to access and inspire it. So as Christians, we have to engage. And it's not just toilet paper that sold out. It's really amazing. I'm sure a lot of you guys saw this on social media, but the Walmart shelves also showed that Bibles were being bought up like crazy. I think people are really searching right now. We got this email yesterday from someone who will remain anonymous. Says, "Hi, my name is so-and-so. I was a member of this church some years ago. I am interested in studying the Bible to be restored. I've been wanting to for a while, but kept putting it off. But God has really shaken my heart now. Anyway, can anyone do online Bible studies? I know we can't meet in person right now. Thank you so much." People are searching. People are looking. People are getting online and looking for God. Now, Phil and I have both been mediaphiles all of our lives. Now we both lead regions of the New York City Church of Christ. Phil's in Brooklyn, I'm in Manhattan, and we continue to apply our passions to our ministries. We partnered up years ago to rebrand the New York Church, and then we've been working together ever since. And about 3 weeks ago, a church of 3,000 got caught in a situation where we had to navigate how to give direction to the church online. So we had to develop a plan really quick, and the dominoes fell fast, from school and restaurant closures to all of our meeting facilities closing down. And no longer was a hopeful email or a Facebook post enough to get and reach every disciple. So the New York evangelists and elders decided we needed some sort of a situational media task force. And it started off being about how to fully transition to virtual church, which we've been affectionately calling Virch Church, hashtag Virch Church. But it's becoming more of a steering committee of sorts as we navigate both the how and the what of the church's messaging. And Phil and I really appreciate the leadership of the New York Church, Sam Powell, Larry Craig, and the elders, in having that foresight and wisdom to put that team together. During this short time, we've learned a lot, and we'd like to share a little bit of what we learned. As a qualifier, because of how we all know how fluid this situation is, we might learn things tomorrow that trump what we learned today. But I think that's just the nature of the beast. So we've got 5 quick hit case study practicals of things we've been learning, and we hope that they're helpful for you. And of course, Phil and I are preachers, so I'll start with P, so forgive us for that, but hopefully it'll be helpful to remember. Phil's going to take the first 2, I'll take the 2 after that, and then Phil will close us out, and then we'll get some time for Q&A. It's great to be together.
Great. Thank you, John. So we're going to share some practicals. Just we're in the depth of it right now, and we're going to just share some practicals that hopefully will help you. Maybe you can pull some things from this that helped us. The first one is people. First practical is people. You know, one of the first things we did is we created a team. You got to have a team. It doesn't matter if it's your church is 30 people or if your church is 3,000 people. You just don't want to do this alone. You got to have, we call it a media team, and you want to do it with people. There's really no room for ego in the midst of all of this. You know, we're not trying to elevate any one person. There's so many needs, and so many people are hurting and looking for direction, and that's what we're trying to do, is to help people. You got to get the right people on the team. You know, get the right people in the room, or right people on Zoom, or whatever you're doing, so you can work together. And it doesn't have to be huge. We're a church of almost 3,000 people, and our media team is four people, and we're sort of a lean, mean, responsive posting machine, and so you know, sometimes you might need to make adjustments to your team. We learned that we kind of pulled together a team, but one of the people on the team, it really wasn't their skill set. They had a great heart, wanted to serve, but we made some adjustments. And so our team now consists of 2 ministers, 1 administrator, and then 1 younger campus worship person. So we're trying to hit all parts, all the notes, you know, a decision maker, a financial person, creative person, strategy person. And so these are some things you want to think about, I think, when you're creating your team. Is you want to have somebody who is a church leader, or at least has the ear of the church leader. Somebody who has some influence over the finances. So if you need to make financial decisions, that was important to us through this. Also, just you want to have somebody with some experience. You know, whether it's posting online or somebody who's been successful at social platforms, just somebody who kind of knows what they're doing. These are the kind of people that make up, in our experience, has made up a good team. And I also think that a big part of it is humility. Obviously, you can have a bunch of super talented prima donnas on your team, but again, there's no room for ego here. If we have humble people using their gifts, knowing their strengths, knowing their limitations, you can really do a great job getting a team of people together. So that's the first one. The second thing I think we learned, or we are learning, and again, we're right in the midst of all of this. I mean, you know, it's just starting up for us, but we're in the deep end trying to sort this stuff out. I think the second thing that we really began to understand is you got to set priorities. You know, there's just a huge amount of needs, and so you ask yourself, well, where do I start? What do I do? Do I focus on? Does our media team? Do we focus on small groups? Are we going to focus on discipling relationships? Are we going to focus on having, you know, strengthening our midweek services? Of things for us, we decided to really focus on 2 things. We decided to focus on our online Sunday services, as well as strengthening our ability to communicate, our ministers communicating with our members, and so on. In fact, I'm going to post this right now in the chat. This is a link that this is a video that we created just like a week and a half ago. It was originally to help our ministers be good at Sunday services and communication, but it's hopefully maybe you can, you know, maybe it'll help you as well. But we realized that, first of all, Sundays, we needed a rallying point. You know, there's a lot of confusion. People are wondering where to go, what to do. We needed a place where we could just call people to come together, to inspire people, to inform people, to help people. And so what we did was we chose our online Sunday services as our first priority. And our team worked to mobilize our preachers, our singers, our teachers, our men, our women, our English speakers, our Spanish speakers, all people, to mobilize them so we could create quality Sunday services. So most of what we did is original content. Of course, if you're not able to do that, there's plenty of content out there that you can point people to as well. But we really wanted to make that Sunday service a beacon of light. And the other thing, like I said, was communication. It's a bad thing right now if a leader goes radio silent. It's a bad thing if a church leader has an attitude of, well, hey, I hope you make it through this. We have to, and we might not be physically present, but we can still be present. You can use MailChimp, Remind, WhatsApp. You can just use regular emails and texting. We set up Zoom for a nonprofit, so we can now exceed that 40-minute meeting time. But there's so many needs out there that we wanted to make sure our communication with our people was very strong.
Amen. Number 3 is process. Now, some of us, we don't have a process when it comes to online plan and media development and execution, but some of us do. We got deadlines for deliverables, we got artwork, we have social media strategy. But what happens in a crisis when the playing field gets leveled? Do we stay calm and carry on with whatever process we had before, or do we develop a totally new process? We think the answer is yes. You got to have something current, but you also need a workflow that's sustainable, spiritual, and effective. So our personal process right now is think, talk, pray, post. The tendency is to put the cart before the horse because we're urgently trying to keep up with the news and get information to our disciples, direction and inspiration. But we encourage everybody that it's better to produce quality than quantity during this time. It's better to release late and good than early and bad. Phil and I, we've spent a lot of time, hours on the phone and Zooming and FaceTiming, trying to figure out and hammer out what is our process, what is the purpose of this team that we've created. And we're men, as he said, under authority as well. So we needed to figure out how our team is going to communicate to the rest of the staff and to the rest of the church. The answer that we came up with as well there was that we needed to be communicating every day with our team, checking in before we send emails out or before we make any kind of independent decisions. So it's a constant thing throughout the day, texting and talking, thinking, talking, praying, and then posting. And when the team is thinking clearly, not desperately, they're unified on the priorities, the people have been designated. That's all great. But before we post, we got to pray. God isn't just part of the process, God is the process. And one of the questions we've been asking ourselves is what scriptures guide our media process? We've been thinking a lot about John 12:49, where Jesus says, "The Father told me what to say and how to say it." The what to say being the content, the how to say it being the delivery. How does our messaging match up with the quality and the priorities, but also the process of Jesus himself? So when we map out our week, when we delegate who's going to do what, who's going to edit what, who's going to post what, everything pulls from the spiritual priority and flows into the process. And for us, that's been our Sunday service, as Phil was saying. And so we're asking questions that only directly relate back to our priority, because process can very easily be distracting. So we're not going to go down rabbit holes. We're going to stay very focused. How are we advertising for Sunday? How are the worship songs going that we're going to be releasing during the Sunday service? Is the artwork ready to go? And does it look like the other stuff that we've been producing for the Sunday service? We can't afford for our process to get distracted right now, more time than any, really. Also, there's no content unless you know the content. Meaning you've got skin in the game, so you got to know what's going on. During the war for American independence, a general might give a messenger a sealed letter to deliver to another general. We think times are different now. We may be humble messengers, but a high efficiency workflow demands that the first tier media team knows what they're putting out there, that they've seen the sermon so they know how to title it or how to market it or how to fill in the description when they're on YouTube or Facebook, that they know what's happening in the news so they can steer the messaging to speak to it, being both relevant and spiritually minded. we're all living in this COVID-19 reality. And I have a friend right now who is sourcing masks from Hong Kong, Ireland, and Germany, and she's getting surgical N95s and FP22s and all these other surgical masks and gowns and gloves into New York hospitals because the doctors and the nurses do not have them. And I've been kind of in the middle of all that as she's my friend and we got to talking. And so she's delivering me boxes and then I'm bringing them up to the nurses and the doctors. You better believe that's driving the messaging that the media team has and is putting out there. We're getting our news from the front lines. And so, yeah, we're directing the church to stay inside, not to go clean their old neighbor's apartment because we realize what's happening out there. You know, the workflow process, if you want to bottom line it, it reflects the priority, which reflects the people. It's a positive feedback loop. And that's what we were aiming for in our personal process. The next thing we want to talk about, number 4, is production. Production. Now, when we're talking about production, and you might be thinking that New York City has a studio and an unlimited budget and interns for our media. Well, all those things would be a huge no. Right now, our budget is 0. All our credit cards are frozen. We've been using all free platforms, as Phil was mentioning earlier about MailChimp and other things. We are using our iPhones in living rooms with a couple of desk lamps. I got them right here. I don't know if you can see them. That's what we're using. That's what we're doing. And so, I happen to have access to our roof. So sometimes we get a nice shot up there if it's not raining. But there's no boom mics here, no studio. We are just doing what we can with what we have. And I think hopefully that's encouraging for the smaller organizations and churches out there that you can produce high quality content that's very inspiring and can direct the church without having a big budget. And if you do, amen to that, go for it. There's a lot of questions coming our way with production in mind about why New York went with pre-produced Sunday services instead of going online live in real time. So I want to explain 3 quick things about our thinking and why we went that direction. Number 1, first off, go with what you know. If you're finding that Zoom works for you, great. Facebook Live, go for it. I wouldn't correct that. I think for us, we realized that there was a strength that we had in editing, but we weren't strong in live streaming. And so we went with our strengths. Number 2, we wanted to eliminate as much human and machine error as possible. So with cell phone towers being overloaded and glitchy internet, and the potential that we have a lot of older members that might not be savvy with the internet, we wanted something that was a little bit more controllable. We could also edit, control timing, control more of the message. We've been pre-producing worship songs that we had pre-recorded from past services, so we were able to show those. It's been really encouraging to be able to interact with that. And number 3, we saw a hybrid of having both a high quality piece of content that would live on the internet long after a real-time stream, but also we released it live on Premiere, both on Facebook and YouTube, to make it feel like there was that live event. And so what happens when it goes live on the internet is that all the disciples are in their living rooms, they get their family together, they get their communion crackers and their communion juice, and they're all ready to go, and they see the countdown, and we release this about 1 hour has been average church service. That's been pre-produced, but of course the content is current. We're talking about what's going on. And then the live chat just explodes. On the right-hand side, people are writing in, hey, so-and-so, and they're calling each other out, and they're saying, amen, brother, and preach the word. It's so encouraging to see the live feel really bring the energy to the interaction of the service online. Something that helped us, too, is to remember that all the late-night talk shows are recorded in the afternoon, even though they air at night. So Fallon, Kimmel, Conan, they're aired later on. It gives them just that little bit of extra time to make sure that all their ducks are in a row. And if that's a huge studio, primetime TV, and we're just, a grassroots media team trying to make it work for a church, we thought it would be good to imitate that. So there's some thinking about why we went that direction. A brief note on data. So one of the nice things about a lot of the platforms that are out there that are free is they give you free analytics as well. And so Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Google Business, we're on all those platforms, and it gives us a chance to see how we're doing, who are we reaching, how is the word getting out there. And so our first service that we did a couple weeks ago, virtual service, we invited 6 out of our 10 regions to join. And by that first Sunday night around midnight, because people would come in and watch sometime in the afternoon after we released at 11, we reached 15,000 people, as you can see on the screen there. And that was just on Facebook alone throughout the afternoon and evening. And then we had another 2,000 engagements on that first day. We actually crashed Facebook Premiere Live. They had to reset from their end. And the YouTube page subscribers just jumped through the roof. So what we're realizing as well, as we're analyzing this incoming data, we had a meeting even a couple nights ago for a couple hours, just sorting through what does the data mean, how many people in our church are watching, how many first-time viewers, how long are they viewing. But we realized that we were catching first-time viewers that were outside the church. So this was becoming a really effective evangelistic tool for the New York church. Now, we're also using Zoom for midweek and smaller groups, but for us, the pre-produced Sunday premieres have been golden. And we think, our limited success is an inexpensive, smart, and scalable model that churches of any size, we believe, will be able to imitate.
Yes, thank you, John. And let me then I'm going to close out with our final point. And this is a little bit more personal, and because at the end of the day, I know we're talking about a virtual world here, but we are still humans. We're still people with souls, and we're trying to connect with each other, and we're trying to connect with God. And the last point is pace. I saw some of the guys talking about this topic a little bit earlier in one of the sessions, and so I was encouraged to see that this is a theme here. But pace, I think that's an important part of this as well. I love this stuff. I love it. I'm like a fish in water with this. Internet technology, video production. I love this stuff. I've always loved this stuff. But I have to be careful, because what happens is I will just dive in and forget everything else. And what's tough about it is, when you fully immerse yourself in something that is good, you can kind of justify it thinking, well, hey, I'm doing good here for God, and you are, and that's great. But you can't forget the things that are important. 2 weeks ago, when this was really starting, and it feels like it's been like 2 years ago, but two weeks ago, when we had our first 2 online services, I really dove in, and I just disappeared for like 4 days, and I didn't go anywhere. I mean, I was stuck at home, but I was gone. I wasn't available, and I was completely immersed, and it really put me in a spot spiritually. And it wasn't because I don't think I was grumpy or mad or difficult like that. It was the opposite. I was actually very excited about this opportunity to serve in this way, but I did get pushy and aggressive and neglectful of the things that are really important. And it all sort of culminated with first a collision with my wife about all of this, and how I'd handled myself and where I'd been. And then later, actually the same day, a collision with John, where John was expressing his thoughts and feelings about how I kind of handled myself through this whole thing. It was just a great, honestly, a great wake-up call for me personally, to go, okay, I got to calm down. I got to slow down. Who knows where all of this is going to go? But I thank God that I get a great opportunity to serve in this way. But I really got to stop and remember what's important. I had to realize that I probably won't be able to do all my great ideas. And I have a lot of great ideas. You're welcome. But
You do.
I do. Thank you. But I I don't know if you're like this, but my brain starts moving, and like my creative juices start going. I'm like, I'm going to do a podcast, then I'm going to do a video, then I'm going to do another, you know, I'm just like, I'm going to do all this stuff, and I get very excited about it. But you know, there's some stuff I just probably won't be able to do because I'm going to need to, as I said earlier, prioritize. And so I really have to just trust God, and all of this is in God's hands. I mean, this is all up to God and where we're going. And John actually said to me, and this was really helpful. He said, you have to pour yourself out and not burn yourself out. So that was very helpful. And I really started thinking, okay, who, how do, when this is all over, how do I want to remember this? A year or 2 or 3 years when we're talking about this in the past, how do I want to remember it? Do I want to remember how stressed I was and how I'm going to need a vacation, after, or how freaked out or at what level I was at? Or am I going to just be proud of myself? Am I going to be proud of who I was and how I served and how God gave me opportunities? So it's just important that you and I, if you're like me, that you pace yourself through all of this. So these are our 5 things. Obviously, there's a lot we could talk about. These are some of the things we were learning firsthand. These definitely applied to us. Maybe they apply to you. People, priorities, process, and production, and pace. And so at this point, we've got some time left. I think, according to my clock here, we got about 20 minutes, it looks like, or so. We'll take some Q&A. I guess we will scroll through here, right? And I see a question here from Roger. What advice would you give the rest of us to prepare for the COVID-19 crisis hitting our regions at different times? Okay, I'll answer that first, and then John, if you want to respond as well, you
Sure.
can. But I would definitely think that in New York, we were playing a lot of catch up. Um, you know, John and I do a lot of stuff, as he mentioned. We do a lot of online stuff and a lot of virtual stuff. But we really realized that a lot of our ministers, our leaders, needed help in this realm with just some really basic stuff. It just wasn't their thing. I mean, they were great preachers, great leaders, but this just wasn't their thing. And so to answer that, I would say probably I would work now at making sure that you have great communication already in place with your church, whether you need it or not, virtual communication. You're not just relying on handing out a bulletin on Sunday mornings. That's great that you do that, but what happens when Sunday mornings you can't be together? What about, do you have a way to text your whole ministry? Do you have a way to email your whole ministry? These are things I would get in place right away as you are preparing for this crisis to probably head your way. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I totally agree. The only thing I would add is that something that's been vital for us is to have a text thread going with all the doctors and nurses in our ministry, because we find that it's difficult to know, with all the different news channels that are coming our way, how to apply the information, the information, whether it's current, whether it's locally specific. And so just getting, whether it's the minister in the different churches or some kind of communication where the doctors and nurses can just immediately text, or maybe a group me would work. They can say, here's what's going on. Here's the prayer requests. Here's what we need. Here's the amount of sick people that are coming in. I'm getting news from our nurses way before I get news from anywhere else. And so I know the needs right away. And so that helps me to leverage resources from around the church, whether that's money, whether that's getting masks, whether that's getting food, whether that's getting babysitting. There's so many different needs that are emanating just from that information alone. So to Roger's question, which is, how do we prepare because the crisis is hitting different places at different times? This gets you ahead of the curve so that when it does hit, if it does, perfectly it doesn't, and wherever you're at in the world, you'll be able to be prepared with news that's very specific and trustworthy.
Great. John, there's a question here a little bit earlier that says, first of all, thank you for all your encouragement. You guys are leaving some Very encouraging words here. And I'd like to hit the like button, but there's no like button. Um, there's a question here that says, how do you pick one good idea out of many? Um, John, is that something you'd want to try to answer there? Or
Yeah,
I can answer
sure.
it and you can, oh, go ahead.
I can jump in first. I mean, I think
John has more good ideas than me, so
no, no, no.
he has a harder time.
We share a brain. We
Uh,
I think going back to process is really important, and like I was saying, there's a feedback loop here where a lot, especially those first three P's, really bleed into one another. The people that you gather in the group, then the priority prosecute it. So to answer the question, how do you decide? If you got the people in the room and you sort of did what we were saying, think, talk, pray, post, that will help establish what is the most important priority, because it's going to be different from church to church. You know, we're trying to help steer a larger ship. It's a 3,000 person church, so our needs might be different. You know, we're feeding more people in a sense, than maybe the smaller church or the medium sized church. So we're trying to consolidate resources a little bit more, but we're also blessed because we have a little bit bigger of a talent pool. So I wouldn't compare apples to oranges there. But once you get the people in the room that need to be there, the decision makers are people that have the ear of the decision maker, the creatives, the people that know how to get stuff online. You guys, that team together, can do so much together, but it does need to stay focused. Once you establish that priority, I would say stick with it for at least 2, 3 weeks so you can examine data. You know, we're only on week 3 here, so we're examining 3 weeks of data. We're still early in the process to figure out exactly what's working, but we do need to stay focused and not switch priorities.
okay, John, I'll take one of these questions, and then if you want to scroll through, there's so many great questions, but I'll answer one here. What advice would you give for a small church that has the message being posted via church website, but no opportunity for members to respond, as you were saying earlier? I'd love to have the feeling of fellowship after the message. What John spoke about posting it on YouTube, we use the Premiere feature, which means everything is pre-recorded and then set to launch at a certain time. Um, and when John explained it, well, before we first did it, I was like, okay, cool, sounds fine, whatever, sounds great. And then I saw it, and it was amazing because what it it was a pre-recorded service, so there was no technical glitches, and it was a little higher quality because you could go between different clips and you go different places. So it's all pre-done. Chat feature, which is built into YouTube, was the best. People were chiming in, people responding. So in answer to your question, maybe you could speak to whomever is posting your messages to try it on YouTube. It's free. You have to have a YouTube channel. It's the Premiere function. It's easy. We, as John said, we did it also on Facebook, but we crashed Facebook because their Premiere function I don't think is as robust as YouTube is. So we just do it on YouTube now. We do it primarily on YouTube. And so you could maybe speak to whoever posts it and just float the idea of, hey, let's try it one Sunday, 11 a.m. We're all going to meet right here. People tune in and they can watch it. It's very easy. YouTube gives you a countdown, and then you click on the live chat. You can click off the live chat if you don't want that. But it's just so easy, and it was really inspiring when I saw it for the first time.
Yeah, I'll just add a brief note. You know, we do church as a family in our living room, and we have 2 teenagers at home. And the first week, you know, we had different devices going, and they were part of the chat. But then we realized the teens got really distracted, and they were more into the chat than they were into the message. So we just plugged in the HDMI cable and saw just the message itself on the TV, and then only my wife and I were allowed to add anything to the chat. And mostly we were just making sure no one was going to say anything crazy. So that's just a shout out to teenage parents out there. I'll handle 2 quick ones. Melissa asked a great question. How do you engage small groups to connect outside of designated Zoom times? And Tom Kuhn, shout out to Tom, has a great piece of advice, which is, and we did this in our region, we encouraged everybody to get a free Zoom account. And I think Phil mentioned this earlier, you got the 40-minute limit, but you can get a ton of people on there. And so we do two things after a midweek service. Some groups, which we call life talks, either get into their groups of 4 and 5 and discuss the message outside of that, or there's a feature on Zoom. I'm not sure what account it's available on, but the one we have is it allows you to do something called Zoom rooms. I'm sure a lot of you guys know this already. And so we just break people randomly into groups of 4 or 5, and then they have discussion times and then come back. So there's a couple little neat features that we've discovered along the way that I'm sure a lot of you know about. Quickly, I'll handle Jenna's, and Phil might have something to add on this as well. But from Boston, she's asking, do you have a messaging strategy you're working against? And do all the regions post the content that comes directly from the media team, or does the media team advise individual regions how to create content for their local region? It's a great question. And again, it goes to how churches have already been set up with their media infrastructure before the crisis hit. What we did is a major consolidation. So our stuff is being trafficked through one place. So the media team collects information, gets the good news, gets the announcements, and then we're posting on our church-wide platforms. Beyond that, some of the regions have been sharing to their individual platforms. So for instance, our region in Manhattan will take something that maybe has been posted on the New York Facebook page and then share it with our local region, get it out through email. And then we use a text feature called Flock Note, flock like as in a flock of sheep or goats. And we pay a certain amount per month. And that allows me to customize texts, no ads, no extraneous features. We used to do it through Twitter, but the Twitter feature has been glitchy. So we've been sending text through Flock Note, and I can post that in the chat in a minute here, a link to that. And that's been helping us to stay engaged and make sure that every cell phone number that we have, both to disciples and friends, people studying the Bible, are being reminded of where the links are to find church and where to go for more Zoom meetings.
John, here's a great question that you might want to respond to. It says, outside of the church, how can you be a support to your community via social media? I think about what you just recently did with the masks. You spoke about it a little bit earlier, but maybe you guys have been doing a lot of stuff with that in Manhattan. Do you want to respond to that one at all?
Yeah, I
share a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So first off, I'm looking where the question is. Is it near the top or the bottom?
It's near the bottom. It's yeah.
Well,
1, 2, 3, 4,
as
5,
far as social
6, 7,
content,
8.
Oh, I see. Is it Anjara?
Yes, that's it. Would you consider what you did with the masks, working through sort of your network and supplying masks to hospitals? Is that kind of what that is talking about there?
So
No?
not exactly. I mean, we all have a social network. I didn't network through social media, if that's what the question is, to get the masks project going. I was just working, through my sort of Rolodex of friends to see who I had out there that might be able to source PPE from abroad and into the hospitals. But it's a great question because what we did, and this is something that's important, I think, to reiterate, while we do have a frontline first tier meeting of 4 people, that team is each connected to several people that are in the church because we needed to activate an all hands on deck approach. So every editor in the church that we knew about, worship teams, artists, graphic designers, we all, each of the 4 of us are connecting with them to help us with the tasks that each of us get delegated when we have our big meeting together. I hope that makes sense. So what we've been doing in Manhattan is we have several people that work for media companies, Hulu, Google, whatever, and we're using and leveraging what they know how to do on social to get news out there, to get information out there. One of our sisters created a Spotify and iTunes COVID playlist of worship music. So people have been subscribing to that so they can listen. We expanded our podcast reach. Artwork is coming in. We just this last Sunday, I think, Phil, one of the videos that we did was edited by one of the women in New Jersey that does this
New Jersey,
professionally.
yep.
A couple weeks
Yeah.
ago, we have someone who's in Manhattan who edited our videos. So yeah, that's how we're working the team aspect, not just the
Right.
small kind of inner circle, but really expanding the net wide to get as help as we can get. So that was kind of two answers for one question.
Yeah. Here's one I'll answer real quick. Roger wrote, "How do you build community and not just viewers?" That's a great question. I do think that's a lot, kind of what we were talking about, how you post it. We have in Brooklyn a couple times we're finishing up for our midweek services, and so what I've done is I've just recorded them and sent out a link, and that's good. And people can watch it or listen to it if it's just audio. They can kind of do that at their convenience, but there's not the interaction. And so we are going to try to do in Brooklyn what we've been doing on a large congregational level, and that is picking times when we will have a midweek, so people can chime in all at the same time, and you get the whole live chat thing, you get everything going, and it really is inspiring. So if you got good church going on and you've got people interacting in the chat, it really is encouraging. And let me just say this real quick: if you're not familiar with this, with this YouTube live chat, you do have a moderator there. Whoever is running the channel is acting as the moderator, so you can watch it. I mean, every once in a while, it's you get someone coming in saying something crazy or something that's not encouraging or self-promoting themselves, or somebody just seeing an opportunity to elevate, to promote their business or whatever. You can easily delete that, or if you have to, people can be removed as well. I mean, obviously that's not the main feel of it. It's actually really encouraging and very inspiring. But you do have those tools as you would in any social setting, just as you would at church. If somebody came into church and they started doing crazy stuff, which happens, you've got means to be able to, deal with that and keep the vibe and the community that you're trying to build. So I think in answer to your question, Roger, it does have a lot to do with how you do it. And we're having a lot of success with the YouTube Premiere feature. So
there are some phenomenal ideas and information being shared in the chat. I hope we can save the chat. I'm sure you can. I'm just not familiar with the Hopin platform, but all those ideas, the deals, Google G Suite, also TechSoup, phenomenal ideas out there. Let's see. Sarah's asking, how much time do you need to plan for if you're a small group in regards to production of a pre-produced service? So it really depends on who you have that can edit. You can do what I might call guerrilla editing in QuickTime or iMovie, or really basic. You don't need something fancy. You don't need the Adobe suite. You just need to be able to get something together that makes sense. A lot of our ministers are just doing their sermon in one take. They get it on an iPhone, they send it into us. We have the luxury we have an archive of worship music videos. That kind of sounded weird. It's not a music video. It's just that we have cameras at church that record our services. And so we're able to go into that archive and share a couple of songs per Sunday. And probably that's been the most encouraging feature that we've been able to offer, because it feels like you're there. People are singing along. We've got lyrics on the bottom. Worship leaders were texting in saying they were in tears, just remembering the times together. So you might not be able to do that, but I'm happy to share what we have with you. So if you want to email me or get together online later, we can give you access to that folder, and you can use those worship songs if that'll encourage you in the small churches. But back to the question, you could pull it in the data and the content on a Saturday, get it pre-posted, And Phil might have mentioned this before, but on Facebook and in YouTube, you can schedule the post. So you get it up there on Saturday. It takes a couple hours to load, especially if you've got bigger content. So you make sure it's all good to go on Saturday. You set it up for premiere, and then you just wait, and it does its own thing. And the chat feature is all there. You can just remind people how to interact with it. So Phil is a phenomenal editor. He's one of the best editors I know. He does such a good job with just adding so much texture to the visual, and he might be able to add more of that. I mean, he's a really he probably would say he's a perfectionist, so he could probably spend a lot more time editing. But
A little bit.
yeah, I don't know.
Trying to pace myself.
What would you say to editing pre-produced videos?
Yeah, well, you know, we're a little neurotic. So in answer to your question, Sarah, and hi, Sarah, how's it going? We are, we've already started. Like for this coming Sunday, we started last Sunday on getting everything together. We're actually having a meeting after this, another online meeting to talk about Easter. We are going to, I guess we can share this. We're going to do one big giant service for Easter for the New York City church. And so we're working on that. So how much time does it take? It takes as much time as you want to give it, but the minimum about, I think what John is saying, you can definitely pull it together in a Saturday. I mean, our services are basically a lot of little, you know, 4 or 5 segments that we've stitched together. That's basically all they are. One person, we usually have an elder start out saying something. We have someone share about contribution and direct people to the online link. We have, like John said, some pre-recorded music that we've already, you know, it was just our services being recorded. We've talked about, like, people just sort of singing, one person singing into a microphone, into the camera, and that's good if that's all you have. But we wanted to show our services because it kind of gives the feel of, oh wow, we're that's right, that's what we do. It's good to see everybody singing and clapping along. I had one brother in Brooklyn who's like, he didn't realize it was pre-recorded, and he said, man, what are they doing? They're not social distancing. And I was like, dude. So after that, we added a pre-recorded text to let people know. So yeah, so you can pull it together quickly. We
Is
don't
that
have
our
to put a lot of
time?
time
I
into
see
it.
Melissa has joined in. Hi, Melissa. How you doing?